I'm just going to push through and do the thing. And it was great in the military because you have to do that. And I was in a war zone and doing my job and did it well, but that doesn't take account for the human. I got taught how to survive in the cold, but I didn't get taught how to survive emotionally in the world. I didn't want to face it either. I mean, for 49 years, and with all the support in the VA and the military saying, hey, we can support your PTSD, come do these things and whatever. And I'm like, no, get away from me, I'm fine. We have to be ready. And then when we are, it's still hard.
Welcome back to the Badass Leaders Podcast. And today we are going to speak with the healing-centered business coach, Suzy Wraines. She is a military veteran and former medical professional who helps healthcare providers transition into soul-aligned entrepreneurship. As the founder of Starting a Business Simplified, Suzy blends strategy with trauma-informed coaching to help clients build sustainable, purpose-driven businesses. You are going to love this episode if you're at that stage in your life where you're feeling a little stuck, maybe in a gray zone, or maybe actually not accomplishing everything you want to. I know for myself, being an entrepreneur with PTSD, the moment I really dug into work, like we're going to talk about in this episode, is when it completely revolutionized the level of leadership and the value I gave back to the world. So stay tuned, watch the whole episode. And now let's do it. Welcome to this week's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast, where I, Gill Nelms, sit down with industry experts for candid conversations about the challenges and joys of leadership. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now let's dive in and get ready to scale your company, grow your brand, and unlock your full badass potential. So, Suzy, before we dive into your incredible work, I'd like to start with who you are as a human. So, what parts of your journey, including military, medical, or personal, have most shaped who you are today?
I love that you asked this question because we are all humans first and foremost. And I think it gets overlooked. Like when we're doing stuff as entrepreneurs, it's like, oh, what do you do? What's your business? And it's like, oh, I'm a person first. So actually live with my husband and 2 dogs and 2 cats. So we are an animal family. And I was born and raised in Alaska. So I think a lot of what comes from my resilience in life is just living in a place that was remote, that didn't have a lot of access to things. So I grew up very survival and just resourceful. So just using what I had. And that bled over into my military career. I was born and raised in Southeast Alaska, so in Juneau, the capital where I grew up, and it's landlocked. So you have to fly in and out. There's no driving. Can't drive in and out of it, boat or plane, which as a kid felt isolating. But then as an adult, I'm like, man, I wish I was there. Because it's like so beautiful and so majestic. And I'm like, I wanted to leave here.
I went to Alaska and I went near Anchorage, and I can't remember what area we went to after that, but I remember that when I got on the plane, I thought, I've heard so much about Alaska. Like everyone said, they say Texas, everything's big in Texas, right? And then they say Alaska, everything is really big in Alaska. And then I landed and we were out and we did kayaking. I learned how to flip whitewater kayak. We did fly fishing. It was so amazing. We took a plane and landed on a glacier and hiked on a glacier. Some of my favorite photos were from that. And so I have so much appreciation, though, for people who can live there, because I know you're going to talk about how this digs into your military service, because I remember when we landed, we came in late at night. And then the next morning, when we came out of the hotel, our rental car, I thought, oh my gosh, what happened to our car? Because it had something sticking out the front of it. And I thought it was like a hose or something that was broken. And I went back inside and asked the hotel people, and they were like, no, that's so you can plug the car in the winter. And I was like, okay, reminder, never be here in the middle. So I sorry to cut you off. I had to say that really quick because I was just like, you're going to appreciate how silly people like myself are when we go to those amazing places.
It's not silly at all. It's when I just did a retreat there, hosted my first retreat, first time ever doing this, and we went right outside of Anchorage. So as you're talking, I'm like, I was just there. So I know where the airport is and like driving around and stuff. And it's one of those things where I had to remind myself, you are a whole country away from the US. Like Canada is in between you right now. You can't just get in a car and drive a little bit and then you're in another state. Like you have to drive through another country to get to the US because it's so far away. And I was like, wow, I just didn't realize how remote and how far away as being a US state that it is. Like, we're in the US, but
that is unbelievable. Okay, so before I so rudely interrupted you and you were talking about how growing up way and the resilience and skills that you learned transitioned into the military, tell us more.
So this really actually, now that you're talking about it, I'm like, oh, no wonder I am the way I am. Survival training was in elementary school. We learned survival training. They teach it to the kids for cold weather training.
What do they teach?
Like you have to plug your car in because it's so cold. It's like, and I met a person from Minnesota and he's like, it's colder in Minnesota than it is here. Well, we were in Southeast, which is like Seattle. It's like a little bit colder than Seattle. But you go up where you were in Anchorage area, even northern Fairbanks area, and it's like 30 below zero. So you have to know what to do if you get stuck outside. So they teach kids when you're young, you get taught how to build a shelter, how to stay warm, what to do when it gets, if you're stuck out in the cold, all those things. And I always thought everybody did that, but it's unique to where you live. I mean, I'm not sure if they do that in Minnesota, Wisconsin, but maybe they should if they don't. But I just found it interesting that growing up, I was so geared towards roughing it, get physical labor and like doing things that were challenging versus learning things intellectually. Now, I did learn intellectually, but there was a combination of the two, which really was valuable when I went into the military. I joined the military when I was 29. So I was older. I was kind of like a grandma.
So that's another thing you and I have in common, because I went back to school to get my degree in biomedical engineering at the age of 29 as well. And I did not know that you did that transition to the military. Okay, so now I have to know this, and I'm still stuck on the element. I'm thinking everyone who's a teacher in the U.S., we totally should be teaching some survival skills to kids. Okay, so but so you grew up and you really it was built into your DNA, this resilience and ability to survive. Now, 29 is pretty advanced, Suzy, for the military. What happened between elementary school and 29?
Yeah, so that was my business. All my business learning happened in that time frame. So I didn't go to college again, like you. I didn't go to college and get my degree till after I was in the Army. So I did all of my business work I learned it as I was doing it. So I got hired in companies and I would learn a skill and then I'd move on and I'd learn another skill and I would move on. So a lot of it, that goes into what I do now, which is very much intuitive. It's really using your intuition and what you already know, things that you've already experienced, and applying what you know to move you forward. So when I went into the military, it was really because I wanted to do veterinary medicine. Here I was working in corporate business. I was supporting sales and marketing and doing budgeting and forecasting and spreadsheets and whatever. And I've been doing spreadsheets. I always say this because the young people out there, I did spreadsheets when Microsoft first came out with Excel and when it was black and white. So I've been working in spreadsheets for a really long time. I worked remote and virtual from home in Colorado before I joined the Army in the 90s. So it wasn't new for me to do something remote and from home. I was talking to a person one time and she's like, you should be like 80 years old with all the stuff that you've done. Like, I like to use it as an example. we can do whatever we want whenever we want. This is our life experience. We get to experience it however we want. So I was working in business, and I told my boss I wanted to go to vet tech school. And here I am working for a corporation, and he's like, well, I don't want you to quit. And I'm like, well, I have to. I've got to go back to school. He's like, well, can you just do it while you're working? I'm like, it's during the day. He's like, well, I know you can do a half a day's worth of work or a full day's worth of work in half a day. So just do what you need to do for work and then go to school. So he let me stay on. And I was like, okay. Wow. So I started that. I started doing that. And then I realized I always wanted to join the military, but I was afraid of basic training. That was my fear. I don't want to go through basic training. It's hard. People are going to be yelling at me. I don't like to be told what to do. I'm very independent. So that was the only thing that kept me from doing it. Well, I actually researched, and they had a veterinary position in the military. In the Army, they have a veterinary position. And I was like, man, they'd give me all my schooling. I'd get training. I'd have a job. I'd be able to do what I really wanted to do. So it inspired me to actually look into it more. Well, I was 29 by then, and I was like, man, if I don't do it now, I can't do it ever. So it pushed me. It really pushed me to that edge of going, do I want to jump off? Or do I want to stay comfortable? And I ended up looking up and went in and talked to a recruiter, and they said, well, the veterinary position, they do schooling. It's kind of like college. And they said, we don't have another class for that for another year. So then I'd be 30. And I was like, man, but I already committed. Like I'd already made the decision inside, and I was like, I really want to do this. I've psyched myself up. I can do basic training. I can do all these things. I'm like, well, what other medical jobs do they have that I could join now and like just move forward? He's like, well, we have, medic, which is a medical technician. Would you like to do that? And then I asked what it was, and it was human emergency medicine. I was like, sure, why not? I mean, it's still medicine. And I wanted to get the education, and I wanted to join the military. It was in 2002, so it was right after 9/11. And I was like, I'm going to be 30. I need to either make it or break it. I got to either do this thing or just give it up. And I'm so glad that I did. And yet, that's also a big chunk of my trauma experience, because I was a medic, emergency responder. I got hospital experience. Everybody went to Iraq. We backfilled the hospitals, so I was doing that. And then I transitioned and got transferred and ended up being with a unit that was actually on the ground in Iraq. So I supported an engineering battalion looking for roadside bombs. So hospital to roadside bombs. That's a little bit different than veterinary medicine. But a lot of the push was making the decision. And that's what leadership, I think, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to be on your podcast, is that there's so many times in my life before now, and then now being a business owner, where it's all about decision making and how do you do that and how do you process that. And a lot of it comes from our gifts and our wounds. If we have trauma wounds, we might make decisions based on a defensive pattern instead of making them from a place of having gifts and experiences. And I had to learn that as an entrepreneur after working in medicine work. And I did end up going back to veterinary tech school when I left the Army, worked in veterinary medicine. So I did get to do that. And then it brought me to here. So I got my business degree when I left the Army. I have done a lot of things. Whatever path you want to go down, just ask me about.
You can say the pros, the cons, the hard, the joys, all of that. So first off, one question I have, and this is a very naive question, but aside from the working dogs they have in the Army, what is the need for veterinary care in the Army?
A lot of it is research and science-based. So they do a lot of and I didn't know this because they don't tell you this as a recruiter, because they're like, you don't want to be in a lab, you want to work with animals. Well, a big portion of it is lab work. So you're actually in testing. They do rabies testing, all kinds of different disease processes. A lot of testing and a lot of scientific stuff. So there's a lot of lab work that happens. I actually met a vet tech that was in the Army when I was in vet tech school after I got out. She was explaining to me, and I was like, ew, I didn't want to do that. I liked working in a small animal clinic and, working with the animals, actually doing surgery and x-rays and all that fun stuff. So It's a lot of it is research based. So they use the technicians mostly for research, and they have every post has a veterinary clinic. So they support family animals and any of the animals that are in the military, that type of stuff.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. I was just suddenly thinking, wait, how does that fit in? Okay. So how many years were you in the Army then?
I was in the Army for 5 years, from 2002 to 2007. I was medically discharged for neck and back injuries when I was in Iraq. And so I was supposed to be in for 11 years because I had reenlisted while I was in Iraq and came home and had issues. So they were like, nope, you can't do your job anymore, which is another thing about the military. The first thing is you have to be able to be a soldier first. So you have to be able to pass your physical training, all the different requirements. And if you can't do that, then you're not qualified to be in the Army. And I was older. I was in my 30s by then.
How did you feel emotionally about that transition? I mean, was it that it happened serendipitously at a time where you were looking to make a next step in your life? Or was it something that you felt like you were losing a part of who you were and what you had worked so hard to accomplish?
This is a great question because I've been actually diving into this more for myself and exploring it with clients and things like that, because that's really what I help them do, is transition from working in a medical position to being their own boss. And I struggled with, because I had gone back to school in the military to get an ear, nose, and throat identifier. So I was working ear, nose, and throat specialty. And they actually had assigned me to the hospital. I was going to be working in the ENT clinic and help assisting in surgeries and things like that. And when they told me I couldn't stay, that was really tough because I had already mentally, again, a lot of what I talk about is really visualizing what you want to do and then doing it. And I had been visualizing myself being back in the hospital in a safe environment, doing something I love, doing this schooling that I had spent extra time to do. And they were like, nope, you're done. And I remember driving off the post for the last time, realizing that I could not use my ID card anymore. And that really hit hard because it's like, oh, your ID card's your identity. Like, this is what gets me across the gate. Nobody else has this except the people who have this. And I was like, well, crap, now what am I going to do? So it was a transition of not only identity, but also financial support. Like, what am I going to do for a job? Do I want to stay? At that point, I had just gotten back from Iraq. So I was like, I don't know that I want to do human medicine because of all the things that I dealt with and keep dealing with those over and over again. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do veterinary medicine because it was physical and I had neck and back issues. So I was going through physical therapy and healing from all that. And I was ignoring my PTSD. I was like, no, that's fine. I'm good there. Just my neck and back have issues. That came up later. But so I had a lot of this internal, but at the same time, and I think this is one of the questions that you had set up for me, how the military affects me now is,
yes,
I would just push forward. It's like, no, I'm committed to survival. So I'm just going to do what I need to do. And ironically, I ended up getting a job right out of the Army with the same company that I worked for before I joined the Army. They just took me back working in business corporate. And that's why I finished my business degree, was because I was like, I'm not sure I want to go back to medicine. That was really traumatizing. I didn't admit it back then, but I think subconsciously I was like, nope, not safe over there. Let's go back to let's go back to spreadsheets. Those are way easier than saving people's lives. I just want to work in a spreadsheet. And I remember when I went back to work thinking, did I even go in the Army? Because I was doing, I'm not even joking, same exact job, same exact company. I just logged on and it was like I'd never left. I was like,
wow.
Almost like the Twilight Zone. I was like, whoa.
Is that, in some instances, that could be comforting and have, be a bit of, especially during that emotional challenge of no longer being able to do and having fear for financial stability and all of this, and then going back in. For some individuals, that can be comforting. For other individuals, that can feel very disappointing, as if, wait, have I made forward progress in my life if I'm back to where I was? What did that look like for you?
I was disappointed. I was in the disappointment camp, but also comfort. I was in my comfort zone. So that it was helpful. It made it easier for me to ignore the trauma I had dealt with because I was in a comfortable spot. So I could just like go back into life. But then the internal struggle was, did I make progress? I'm not doing what I wanted to do. I'm back where I was before, and I'm still not doing what I want to do. And now I have all these physical and emotional scars to deal with, to be able to overcome, to be able to actually keep moving. So I was kind of in a gray zone. It was like, yeah, I'm going to work every day and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, not fulfilled. And I still have these hopes and dreams of things that I want to do. And I'm older. I'm another 5 years older. So now that's the juggle. And I think I wish I had someone like me back then, because then I would be looking at the wounds. I would be really looking at them and allowing myself to feel, process, and let go of them. And that's probably the biggest regret that I had. But I didn't know. We don't know what we don't know. And I don't think this type of work that I do now was really available back then. This was, when was it, 2007? If it was just starting to kind of come in, where people were talking about healing from trauma and somatic training and like how to handle things and what to do and how to change your perspective and shift your mindset and meditate. And I was taking a handful of pills from the VA because that's all they knew to do for my sleep, my insomnia, for nightmares, for physical pain. Like I was on whatever you could name. And all of those went away when I started doing the healing. I literally worked with my doctor to get me off of all of my medications through meditation and internal healing and my own energetic process. And now I don't take anything, which is awesome, but it took me several years to get there. But I was on medication for over 10 years.
Wow. Wow. And I will tell you this, that the majority of the Badass Leader community that watch this podcast are between the ages of 25 and 40. And many of them, I know what you're saying right now, this feeling of being in a gray zone, a feeling of I haven't accomplished what I really want to accomplish. I feel like I'm stuck. How do I actually break that? I know that it resonates with so many people. And I think while you didn't have you back then, they have you now. So that is one of the huge goals of this podcast, is to help that next generation of leaders be able to accelerate and move past those challenges. Now, I don't want to move too fast though through the PTSD component of it, because I'm curious, back in that time when you were coming out of the military, how much did you know that you had PTSD? How much were people talking about it? What did screening look like or not look like? What was that in the culture and the way that the world kind of enveloped that type of challenge at that stage?
I would say it was my internal resistance over society. So they did a really good job. I was actually rated for it. The doctors knew I had it. I got support for it. I saw a psychotherapist through the VA for a year. There was groups, there was tons of things out there, but I was resisting stepping into it. So they're telling me, you have this. And I'm like, whatever. I grew up in Alaska. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You just deal with stuff. And so it was my own internal resistance. And I want to talk to your audience based on you describing who's listening, because that's what gets you out of the gray area. You have to go inside. You have to look at yourself. And I didn't want to. It was way easier to look external and go, I'm fine. And that's a defensive pattern. My strongest defensive pattern was to push through, was to push down anything and just keep moving forward. So when I got out of the military, I got my job back, started college, which meant I was working and doing school full time. So sleeping 3 hours a night so that I didn't have to deal with it. I'd taken all my pills so that I wouldn't have to feel, because that's what it does. It helps you just deal with life. And I just was numb to everything. So I wish that I would have taken the advice and really embraced what was offered to me Like they were offering here's how we can help you. But one of the biggest things I think in that age range too is when you're between 20 and 40, you're independent. You're like, screw that. I can do this. I'm good. I'm fine. I don't need anything.
And invincible,
no matter what.
right?
Yeah. And when you start talking about you need to go inside and look at your feelings and and it's like, well, I'm not doing that. Are you kidding? That's weak. Especially when you're trying to do something to prove a point, which is what I was doing. I always felt like I had to prove a point that I could do things. And that was, I think, and a lot of that is childhood trauma. That's stuff I had to deal with as a kid, not knowing that it was affecting me subconsciously. So my whole pattern was, I'm just going to push through and do the thing. And it was great in the military because you have to do that. And I was in a war zone and doing my job and did it well. But that doesn't take account for the human, which that's why I loved when you asked at the beginning to talk about the human, because we're human first. Then we do the things. And so I would love for your audience, anything they take away from this, look at your human first. Let yourself be human. Let yourself feel. Ask questions to yourself. I do trauma energetics healing work. That's the first thing you do is you listen to your body. Your body knows everything. And when you sit for a minute and you listen, I'll use an example of getting ready for this podcast. Because the questions you were asking me, I was like, oh, so deep and so good. And I'm like, how do you feel about that, Suzy? Like, let me sit with myself for a minute. That's vulnerable. If you would have asked me to do this interview 2 years ago, I'd have been like, no. Ain't gonna go there. Or if we did do the interview, it'd be like, so I can talk to you about a spreadsheet and tell you how to start a business. I can talk to you about bookkeeping and all the things, but you would not hear me talk about anything that had to do with me, like how it is that I am who I am, why I look at the things the way that I do. So I just would encourage the listeners, really, really get curious without judgment of who you are. Like, who is that inside you? And what do they want to do? What do they want to communicate? Because guaranteed, I would have done veterinary in my 20s, jumped in full force, and just did the thing. But instead, I did the survival route. I got the job that they gave me. I learned it, did it well, and made enough money to survive, and just did that track. And that little voice kept saying, go back and do, go back and do. And I was on track, off track, on track, off track. And that's really growing up. That's just growing up in your 20s and 30s. It's kind of who we are. But man, if I had my advice if I was talking to me back then, I'd be like, don't do that. Just do the thing you love. Just go down that path. Be okay if nobody agrees with you. That's totally fine. Don't worry about what other people think. Just be yourself, be who you are, and do what you love.
I love this. And you know what? I'm thinking I work with a lot of young entrepreneurs, and I can almost see some of our listeners listening to this and saying, wait, that is me. I'm going into work and I'm maybe the CEO of my company, or I have this particular role, and I can't let anyone think that I am anything less than the best, that I don't have all the right answers. I can't let them think any of these things. And so I'm just going to ignore my health, ignore my hobbies, ignore my rest time, ignore my sleep. All of those are extra. Instead, I'm just going to push forward because that's what all the great leaders do. And Suzy and I both want to stop that mindset, because the amount of years and pain in our lives that we lose and we throw away, and we miss out on that joy we can have if we pause and, like you said, check with our body, check with ourselves, ask ourselves questions. Remember that we are the one human walking on this planet that we can be, no one else. And the faster these leaders get to the point where they want to be brave and bold and jump out and take the risk to do what they want to do, the absolute better it can be. Now, I want to know this. You went back and worked with the company, and you were going to school. And then when you graduated, how long did you work? Because I also want to find out, What made you want to move from medical innovation into the entrepreneurship work that you do? So what did it look like? You graduated and you started as a vet tech. What did that journey look like?
Yeah, so I like to say the best way to describe this is I got to taste both worlds. And so I went to school for both. I went to school for medicine and I went to school for business. I have a bachelor's in business administration. I also did medical training through the Army plus vet tech school through the veterinary route. Very similar. In the veterinary side, we actually do more as technicians with assisting in surgery, running anesthesia, like all the things. And so it's a lot more pressure. So even though you're working with an animal, it's just as much pressure because you have a human attached to the animal. So it's like, not only am I worried about the animal, I'm also worried about the human that's attached to the animal. So all of that, I was like, the one reason that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and this is going to sound so silly because I've been talking about being brave and and looking at yourself. I didn't actually start looking at myself and on my own healing journey until 3 years ago. So I started my business still resisting healing. Like, I'm just going to be a business owner. I'm going to control my environment. That was my thought. I had been in veterinary medicine for 5 years, and I had been getting triggered at work when I would be in surgery and a smell would happen, or an owner would have a look on their face, something would trigger my nervous system, and I'd be like, I gotta get out of here. And I thought, well, if I can just control my environment, I'll be good. Again, avoiding actually what needs to happen. So I decided to be my own boss. I'm like, I'm going to do my own thing. I went to coaching school, got my coaching certification, and I thought, what kind of coaching do I want to do? Health coaching was what I was certified in, health and life coaching. And I thought, well, I can do health coaching because I understand the health side. I hated it, absolutely hated it. I was like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. What I didn't
a couple
like
of things
about,
really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, well, and a couple of things. One thing I want to comment when going back to the vet tech and the vet work that you did is that most people don't know that veterinarians have one of the highest suicide rates of any occupation. Like dentists and veterinarians have super high suicide rates. And when you think about it, especially having to put animals to sleep, and working with the family and seeing that trauma and all of these things. And these animals are just, especially I think of like dogs, that they can be in so much pain and their tail is still wagging. I mean, come on, right?
Yeah.
And so I think going back to your comments about getting triggered in that, I can imagine the reality is so many people in that space who didn't previously have PTSD are getting triggered. So pile onto that your PTSD that you were coming in, as well as that. I love tying back to your childhood and how you built this resilience and this survival skill, and I'm going to forge forward because that's what I do. So you've got this PTSD, you have a compassion for humans. So that is the other piece of it that I see throughout your journey in each of these steps is you really wanted to help make other lives better in some way, right? And all of these things had the right intention, but they're almost counterproductive to making your life the best it can be in that way. So I just want to highlight, like, watching the craft of your story, I can totally see how you now, and I'm so thrilled for everyone to hear how you transitioned and how you got into what you're doing now. But let's go back to that. So you started coaching. What did you hate about health and life coaching or health coaching?
I think now that you described that, and I love how you had the common thread in there, I wanted to help other people, and I was sacrificing myself to do it. I didn't know how to heal my own trauma, my own wounds, in order to not self-sabotage. So when I tried to help somebody health coaching wise, I could do all the coaching cool stuff that they teach you all day long. But until I experienced what it was like to actually let go of patterns of my own, I couldn't help anybody. And I was frustrated at that because it's like, I can't help you. Like, there's nothing I can tell you because I hadn't experienced it myself. So I didn't know I didn't know the secret thing to give them the secret idea, the secret thing to do to help break them through, because I had never broken through. And I think that's what was happening is I was in a position where I could help people, but I couldn't help people, which is Like in physical medicine, they bleed, you stop the bleeding. But when you're coaching and you're making, it's a transformation, it's an energetic shift, it's a mindset shift, it's all these things you can't see. There's nothing I could do. I was like, well, crap, I can't do this. This is not. So I think that's where my resistance to that type of coaching happened, which caused me to go, okay, what can I actually do that has proof that I'm helping them? Business. That's easy. I know business. I know how to do that. I can help people create a business, and then they have a tangible thing. I can see their progress, and then I feel better that I help them. Again, I'm going to say for your listeners, this is not the right way to think. This was me unhealed. This was me trying to figure it out mentally. Just like, let's intellectualize this whole thing. When what needed to happen was I needed to go inside, heal from my trauma wounds all the way back from when I was a kid. I use this example all the time because it's really, it was transformative for me. When I started trauma energetics for myself and I had my own trauma energetics coach, we uncovered that my brother used to make fun of me. I was the youngest. He's an older brother. It wasn't like I was traumatized, big T trauma, like in a car accident or in a war zone. Yes, I did that later. But him making fun of me and me crying and then my parents saying, don't cry, was stifling. And I grew up in a household that wasn't the best. I had an alcoholic father, I had a mental health mom, and we were a mess. Like our whole family was a mess. So on top of just trying to live life, have food and place to sleep and all that, I had my brother making fun of me. And in my subconscious, I had decided it's not safe to cry or speak up because I'll be made fun of. That's a trauma pattern. That was a defensive pattern. I like, just shove it down, Suzy. Just don't show emotion. Push through. Do the best you can. Don't be in the spotlight because then you might get embarrassed, because that's what it was. He would make fun of me, embarrass me. And that causes you to not want to move forward. But it's a good skill to have if you're in a war zone treating people who might die because you don't want to be crying and all upset because they're bleed. Like, there are gifts in that, part of the wound. But I was living in the wound. So I was very methodical about things, very unemotional about things. And I was like, why am I not moving forward? So I ended up going down my own healing path. When I started to go deeper into me and decided, oh, I need to address these things. I need to let them go because energetically they stay in your body. Physically, physiologically, they're in your body. They cause disease. They cause problems. I have a thyroid issue. Fear of speaking up. Dealing with my thyroid issue. There's just all these things that can happen. I used to get migraines all the time. I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, what is an example that I can give on the podcast? I was like, oh, since I started trauma energetics, doing my own healing, and then I got certified in it, so now I use it with my clients, I haven't gotten physically ill in almost 3 years. Not a cold, not a sniffle, nothing. When I got home from Iraq, I was sick for a year. I had bronchitis, I got walking pneumonia, I had the flu. Like, I felt like I was sick every 10 minutes. It was just like ongoing. Like, my nervous system just went, I'm done. And my whole body just shut down. And now I'm like, that's a tangible thing. How many people would love to go through life and go, I've been sick for 3 years?
I would love to go through life and say I've been sick for 3 years.
No, I'm not saying that's the byproduct for everybody. I'm just saying I was trying to think of, like, what are some significant shifts that have happened in my life since I started looking at myself? I'm sleeping better. I don't take a handful of meds anymore. I'm actually eating healthy. I'm taking care of my thyroid. I'm doing things that my body's like, thank you. And you name those, like leaders like, I got to push through. I'm going to sacrifice myself and my health and all the things to do this one thing that everybody is expecting me to do. But if you do the reverse, there's more of you to give.
One of the things, and when I first went and was in residential treatment for my PTSD, and I first read the book, The Body Keeps a Score, I highlighted and underlined almost the entire book. I have all these tags on it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally understand why I react this way in a situation and this way in a situation. And I know there's someone listening here that's thinking, I do not have time for that. That's woo woo. That's silly. That's da 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 da. I can tell you this as a leader. My leadership abilities grew so much just by understanding why I was reacting to, for example, this medical officer, and when he would raise his voice at me and call me out in front of everyone, especially when I was innocent, right? Because that ties back to as a child, right? When you don't have a voice and you're not allowed to speak and you're not allowed to advocate for yourself. And so the beauty was I finally got to a point where I could observe, I could sit in a situation where this was happening and I could pause, I could ground myself with my feet and with my fingers and some other techniques. And it calmed myself down. And also in those situations, when you're more calm, the other person ends up being more calm. Secondly, I also looked at him and realized that the way that he was reacting to me was most likely nothing to do with me and had to do with his own challenges that he was having. And so it actually improved our relationship because then I didn't look at him as if he was this evil thing. I saw him as a human who had other challenges, and I was more curious about how to then dig in and collaborate with him than I was before. So taking the time to understand your body and how you're reacting to things and how your situations in life have led you to who you are today, accepting those, and then making a conscious choice. You're not wasting time. You're actually speeding up your path to becoming the best human and leader you possibly can be.
Yes. And all of what you said, I 100% agree with. And that's a great description. You describe one of my clients, she's a physician assistant, and she does, they do monthly call where she has to be on call at a hospital with a physician. And she's like, Suzy, ever since I started working with you, there's this one physician that just drives me crazy. He's just so overbearing and like difficult to work with. And he's always like closed off and stuff. And she goes, and I went in and I saw he was on the schedule, and she's like, okay, I'm just going to focus on myself and ground myself, and I'm here and it's me and I know how to respond and whatever. She goes, it was the best time I've ever had working with him. I'm like, yeah. Because when we can see things from that perspective and we can remove, they're doing what they know and we're doing what we know. But if we can remove ourselves from the defensive side of it, which is like, ooh, it's uncomfortable, and go, it's not uncomfortable. I'm being me and I'm good and I'm solid in who I am and what I do. And I know that I have triggers based on experiences in life, but I can see those. I know where they're coming from. It reminds me of when we work with colleagues, and I collaborate with people all the time, and I can feel it in my body. I've learned what, if my heart's racing or if I start sweating or if I have this lump in my throat or whatever this, my body gives me a sensation before I even have a thought. And if I feel that, I know what to do. I know how to go, okay, take some deep breaths. Okay, you're seeing them from a defensive pattern, Suzy. Let's switch out of that mode. I love that you said choice. Once you learn where these come from, what's coming through, you can then make a choice. So one of the examples, I love using this, I use it on my podcast all the time, is when I first started doing business coaching and I had clients, I'm like having these weird body sensations before a call. My heart would start racing, I'd start shallow breathing, and I'd be sweating, and I'm like, I don't want to get on the call. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why do you feel this way? So I met with my trauma coach, and we did a session where I actually went into my body and created that sensation again and asked, where's this coming from? And what came up was, you are afraid of not being able to help somebody. If you can't help them, they will die. Because you worked in emergency medicine, if you did not treat them properly, they could die. And now you're looking at your clients on a Zoom screen, like if you can't help them, they'll die. But you're not doing that. You can reprogram that. You can tell yourself now before a call, okay, I'm not in a war zone and I'm not at the hospital. this is just a person on the other side of the screen. Take some deep breaths, ground, and like reprogram that. I was just being triggered by the fact that they were a patient, but they weren't. They're a client now, and they're not going to die, and it's okay, and I am not going to die, and everybody's good. But when we don't know where that comes from, we don't take the time to really sit with it. And that's what I wasn't doing before I did the trauma work. And that, like I said, that's been in the last 3 years that I've been doing that. So I'm 52. So for 50 years, 49 years, I lived in the trauma patterns.
And our goal today is for all the listeners to not do the same thing. Now, one of the words you've used a couple of times, and I was trying to decide, when am I going to ask her to actually explain what that is? But let's go ahead and explain it. And I can't remember exactly what the phrase is. It's trauma something therapy. What is it?
It's trauma energetics coaching.
Yes. What is that?
And so it's the energy and physiology of trauma is one of the courses that we take in the certification course. But the coaching piece of it is you're really combining somatic work, body work, and nervous system with energy, because we have an energy body. And when I first took this, I was like coming from a medical science background, and I was like, energy? What are you talking about? That's weird. You can't see it. If you can't see it, it's not real. It's like, no, it's there. You do see it when you see static, if your hair's like going up in the air, and you can see energy. If you, everything around us is made from energy. We're from energy. This coffee mug, it's all vibrating, it's energy. So once I could wrap my brain around that, I was like, okay. And then it was, so when our nervous system is in fight, flight, or freeze, trauma, it is actually affecting us energetically, which then affects our physiology. It affects our stress hormones. It affects how our cells function. It affects everything physically in our body. So it makes sense that we would feel a body sensation and have that remainder that's its residual energy from a traumatic event, because our nervous system has one job, and that's to keep us safe. So it's going to do whatever it needs to do to keep us safe. And if something similar to a dangerous thing happens, it doesn't know the difference between a thought or reality. So it's automatically going to kick into gear. And so what trauma energetics does is it's helping people recognize the body sensation that they're having when they are stuck. For example, if they're self-sabotaging or they're procrastinating, that's a freeze, like procrastination. I'm just going to avoid it, whatever. So why are you doing that? So you sit with it for a minute, you're almost in a meditative state. You sit and you listen to your body. Think of the thing, and then remind you. And then I ask people, I'll do sessions with them. I'll ask them, when was the first time you felt that sensation in your body? Oh, I was like 8, and it was in school, and my teacher yelled at me. Oh, tell me more about that. What is your body feeling about that? They start to go through it, and they go, oh my gosh, that's what it is. So we work through the process of letting that go, letting the energy out, whatever that needs. They may have to get up and walk around the room. They may want to yell or do something just to move the energy. And then when they're done, they're like, it's gone. So it's a difference between when you are having a resolution to something or when you're just regulating it. I regulated for 49 years. I was just regulating. I was just surviving. When you resolve it and you go straight to where it is that it happened first, you don't have to remember the event even. You can just be in the experience and you have the sensation and just go, there it is. Okay, now that's there. It doesn't need to be there. I'm not being chased by a bear right now. I can let that go. Just in that remembering, okay, this was the past. This is now. I'm safe. Reconciling that it does amazing. I mean, I can't even describe it. It's like one of those things where you almost have to experience it and then realize, oh, this is real. But for me, it's always layers. So the big stuff is usually what's up at the surface and like wants to get out faster. Now, 3 years later, I can tell if I'm in a loop, something I can't getting over. Like it's just keeps coming back and I keep struggling with it. Then I call my coach and I'm like, okay, I need a session. This one thing that I can't keep, I can't get rid of. And then we go deeper but I can do a lot of this for myself, by myself, on my own, do it all the time. We didn't get taught that. I got taught how to survive in the cold, but I didn't get taught how to survive emotionally in the world.
Gosh, this is such a great thing. Well, one, I want to put an exclamation point, bold, underline the phrase that you talked about, how we regulate things versus resolving them. And oh my gosh, the minute you said that, I thought, wow, that is exactly what we do so much in so many areas of our lives. And it makes me think of when you have something and it's not completely finished, it's always taking up cognitive space in your brain. It is dragging down your energy. You are using resources to attend to it that you don't even realize you're using resources to attend to it. And then I think that's why a lot of us love checklists, so we can check things off of the checklist, right? That the amount, like the endorphins that we get when we check that off is that release of energy, because you're no longer utilizing that cognitive energy to keep it in your head that you know you have to do. And I think it's the same thing when you're dealing with this and you were just powering forward, you're driving, you can accomplish anything, you're resilient, you're tough, you're all of these things, and you're just regulating through life, keeping all the balls going. And every single day, you're just adding on more and more cognitive energy that you're losing from actually being able to do something forward moving and progressing that you get once you resolve. It's that same feeling of once you check off things off of your checklist and you suddenly feel this, great feeling of accomplishment and a load off of your shoulders. I think it's like if you slowly add a stone into a backpack, you suddenly can be carrying 10 pounds in that backpack and not realize it because you're slowly adding it. But once you take the backpack off, you're like, whoa, wait, I feel so much better. And it's the same thing of that regulating versus actually resolving, which I just think is amazing. But a question I have for you is, how do you work with your skeptical clients? Or do they just self-select out, right? Like, how do you deal with that?
I love this question because I had this experience just this month at my retreat. So my retreat was energy and business. It was a business retreat, but it was with the underlying understanding energy piece and trauma piece. And I had one person that was just like, really? And I'm like, you got to experience it. And one of the things that is challenging is everybody's on their own path at their own time. And one of the biggest things that I can tell people is be curious without judgment. Like you mentioned it earlier, when you step back, like step outside of yourself for a minute, just be observant. And if it's not comfortable, then you're not ready, and that's okay. If it's not comfortable and you want to do it anyway, then you're ready and you want to be uncomfortable. I tell people all the time, it's uncomfortable. I didn't want to face it either. I mean, for 49 years and with all the support in the VA and the military saying, hey, we can support your PTSD, come do these things and whatever. And I'm like, no, get away from me, I'm fine. We have to be ready. And then when we are, it's still hard. I still would sit with my trauma coach and she'd be like, and where do you feel that in your body? I'm like, I don't feel it anywhere. She's like, it's okay.
This is me. Here I am, Suzy, and I'm in residential treatment, right? And this is after the kidnapping, and I'm like spending 6 months there. And I have the first time a therapist said to me, where do you feel that in your body? I was like, I don't want to feel anything in my body. Like, stop. And I've heard that is a very common reaction to people who have had severe trauma in different ways. And also, I definitely did not want to do anything with any inner child work or any of that nonsense. No,
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yes. Like, it's not here today, so it's not valid. Like that. Right. That thinking.
Right. Yeah. And they did stuff where some of the therapists, like, they would have these people carry around babies and stuff. And I was like, I want to be very clear. I was a horrible, horrible patient. I said, I want to be very clear. I'm not carrying around any of those babies. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but I somehow made the impression that I was just going to dump my inner child like down a well. Like they had this little play thing and you were supposed to do this experience. And I was just like, I'm just dumping it down the well. And I remember the therapist looking at me going, oh my gosh, I have so much to work with her. But it is, you know, when you're first approached with it, especially when you have all of those coping skills that have allowed you to survive, the idea of this, and I love what you were also saying, you have to be at the point of your journey that you can be open to it. And I think even some individuals are listening now and they're like, or maybe they've stopped listening because they're like, these ladies are crazy. And maybe they'll come back. But if we put a couple of seeds in there, then they'll hear something somewhere else, or they'll hear something somewhere else. And the sooner they get to this path, it can, and you're exactly right. You do have to experience it yourself order to be able to really, I mean, it's almost like you can't even explain it with words. It is so much in your body that to explain it with words is, we're just trying to describe something that you will only be able to experience when you let go and try yourself.
Yeah, and let me give an example of my journey to your listeners. So for those people that are skeptical, I'll tell you, I remember the exact moment that I became ready. And we lived in our RV. We were in Colorado at the time. I was walking, and it's like ingrained in my brain when I was like, okay, I'm done. I will do whatever anybody says. I don't even care. Bark like a dog, squawk like a chicken. I don't even care at this point. I just want this to go away. I'm walking on this paved path, and all I remember is like talking to myself going, why can't I just let this go? Why can't I just be normal? Why do I have to carry around all this crap that I know exists? Mentally, have the cognitive understanding that I have this horrible childhood I went through. Then I went in the Army. Then I was in the war zone where it got totally exacerbated even more. And here I am now. Why can't I just enjoy life? Why can't I just be free of this? Why can't I just wake up in the morning happy, joyful, and wanting to see the next minute of my life? Why does this have to be like this? And I just was like rambling, just like, and then I stopped and I'm like, because I won't let myself, because it's safer to stay in the turmoil. That's comfortable because I've been doing it for 50 years. I'm like, no, I got to be able to be uncomfortable. I need to be okay being uncomfortable. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm done. I started searching. Started actually looking for help. I was like, I don't want regular mental health because I've been through that, and obviously I resisted it enough that it did a little bit, but not exactly what I needed. And so I just started, and I think the universe just went, okay, you're ready now, here you go. So whoever's listening to this podcast might be the universe handing you because you're ready. They're like, here you go, here's some information that's going to help you. Now you're ready. For other people, they might turn it off because they're like, I'm not ready. And I was that person. I was not going to read or listen to or whatever. Like, no. And so when I was able to say that, I felt like I was hitting a wall. Like I just kept bumping into an invisible wall. Like I'd want to move forward and then bam. And a lot of it, I'm going to tell people, this isn't just mental. The physiology of your body is changed when you have trauma. The physiology of your body, I want to say that again. All your hormones, stress hormones, all of your functioning to be homeostatic, you have to have all this balance. And when that gets dysregulated at a young age and then in life and reinforced over and over and over, your body is resisting too. Thyroid issues cause fatigue, chronic fatigue, and weight gain and not being able to, joint pain, like all these things happen. And I'm thinking I'm just depressed. No, my body is physically breaking down because I haven't addressed trauma that's been happening. Even small things like being made fun of by my brother, silly stuff. So it's not that people don't experience trauma. We all do. I mean, we're in a world of look around. As soon as we're born, we go from a nice, warm, cozy place to bright lights and screaming people and like it's freezing cold. That's a traumatic experience by itself. Just being born is trauma to your body. So from that moment on, then it's all your perception. You could have the most loving and beautiful family, and a teacher looks at you funny when you're in school and you perceive it as a threat. Your nervous system kicks in, and then from that point on, you struggle and you're like, I don't understand why. So I just want to encourage people to just be curious. For those people that are skeptical, test the theory. I'm going to talk to the people that are like scientific. Test the theory, test it out and see what happens.
Yeah, experiment. I love to do experiments in business. So experiment with it. You know, one of the things too. So going to the trauma piece, and like I remember several years ago, I think I started seeing my integrative medicine doctor around 2021. So the kid was in 2020, it's like 2021. And I remember the first time I went in and I said, I'm gaining all this weight. I'm exhausted, da, 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 da. Of course, he pulls up all my levels. And he said at that point, he was like, your Hashimoto's syndrome is off the chart. Okay, now fast forward several years later, it's gotten even worse. He's like, you get the award of having the highest number for Hashimoto's of all of my patients. And I'm like, that is not the reward that I want to get. And it's the hit on your cortisol, the hit on those pieces, and the impact that it has on your entire well-being. The longer you wait to address those things, the more damage you are doing to all of those systems, you know, your adrenal glands and all of that, that has a huge impact on your livelihood. So it is, and the other piece I was going to say is I learned when I was also in treatment about generational trauma. So they've done all this research about like the mothers that were pregnant during 9/11 and the mothers that were in concentration camps and followed the outcomes of the children and their reaction. And the trauma that was caused to those mothers actually ends up in the egg and actually has an impact. Scientifically, they've proven this. So for all of the naysayers, there's so much real, not fake news. There's so much real science out there that I really want to encourage people to jump in. So tell me this. I know that what you're doing today, you work with healthcare professionals looking to create what you call healing-centered businesses. So we're going to talk about that. But what are some of the biggest mindset shifts that they need to make when they're moving from the clinical role into entrepreneurship?
There's a couple, and one actually feeds the other. So the first one is that they're coming from a structured environment. They're coming from protocols, procedures. You walk in, your patients are handed to you. You get what you get. You don't have a choice. So the decision making is less. The doctors and physicians that are diagnosing and doing those types of things, they're doing diagnostic stuff, but they don't run the hospital. So all of it is downward driven. So like they're being told, here's your orders. And I know for me, being a veterinary nurse and then being in the Army hospital, it was always, here's the orders. Here's what you do. It's given to you. So you go in confident because you just have your skills. You know what to do. They tell you what orders to do. You go in, you see the patient, you do the thing, you're good. When you become an entrepreneur, all of a sudden, this was my struggle. What are you going to do today, Suzy? Oh, I have to come up with what to do today. Oh, I need to write that protocol. Oh, I need to write, wait a minute. I get to do whatever I want. Very uncomfortable. And most of my clients struggle with confidence. That's the first thing they tell me is they're like, I didn't go to business school. I'm like, you don't have to go to business school. You have 25 plus years of medical experience that you're coming with. You're already doing all the things that an entrepreneur would do. You just have to shift your mind around it. Go from an employee to a CEO. What does that look like? Now you're stepping back and you're not task oriented. You're looking at a vision and you're going, okay, this is the overall thing that I want to do. And this is what the outcome I want it to be. What do I need to put in place to get there? And what I do specifically, and this is what makes me different than a lot of business coaches, is I only work with them at the beginning, just for the foundational piece, mostly for online services type people, coaches, consultants, people like that. I do have a couple people that started their own practice, but they left a clinical setting to do their own thing at home. Some of them are going to do brick and mortar, but really it's how are you taking money? How are you documenting things? How are you going to get business? Where are you going to get your clients from? Those basic things and their mindset, because they're coming, a lot of them, and I'm shocked. They come out of being 20 years in the medical world and they go, I don't know anything. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know anything? Like, oh my, and you put them in the clinic and all of a sudden they're brilliant. And you're like, how did that happen? I have clients that still work full-time jobs, clinical jobs, and they come coach with me and I'm like, you are brilliant. Look at what you're doing in the medical world. Let's bring some of that over here, because it's all still you. And they're so conditioned to having letters after their name and getting more certifications and more degree. And I'm like, no, you have lifetimes of valuable expertise that you can bring over. You just need to look at it different and look at it from that perspective. I have a client right now that she finally had this massive breakthrough, and she's like, I finally feel like an entrepreneur. She's still working full-time in the clinic, and she's like, man, when I work on my business now, it's totally different. Before it was like, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm not sure. And now she comes at it and she's like, no, I'm in charge. This is what I'm doing. And this is how and I have all this value to bring to the world, because they think all the value is in the clinic. It's only in the clinic. And that's just not true. And I think it's overcoming that limiting belief of I can only do what I was trained to do. But there's so many skills that are outside of that training that they already have.
In thinking about the mindset shift piece of it, one of my favorite things is to hear what different leaders think the difference between a manager and a leader is. And I think the mindset shift that you have between being a manager to being a leader is so similar to what you just described of being in an ecosystem where you're task oriented, you're driven by things that are set up and solid in nature or pre-scripted and that sort of thing. And now you're in where you have to have a vision and you have to figure out the people to help implement your vision and those types of pieces. So when you think about that between a manager and a leader and a clinician and entrepreneur, how do you think that those mesh together or align together, or is it just a crazy question?
No, I thought about this question, and it's so cool to think of, because I have a military example. You have, I was a non-commissioned officer, so I was in charge of soldiers. Soldiers are like managers. They're like doing the things. And an NCO is the leader. So of these, I had 6. Of these 6 soldiers that I oversaw, I was there to empower them to step up and do the things that they knew they had to do. I wasn't there to pick up the shovel for them and show them how to do it. Like, they're independent people. My job was to empower them with what they needed. So they would come to me and say, we need this supply. Okay, let me make sure you have what you need. Let me make sure. So leaders are really taking that big vision and making sure that it plays out. So like you said, as an entrepreneur, okay, I do a podcast. When I first started, I did all my own production by myself because that's what I could afford. But the vision was to hire someone, knowing I'm going to hand that off later. And so I did a whole podcast episode on CEO versus employee mindset. And that was one of the things. My husband, when our business finally took off, he wanted to do the production. So I'm like, great, when you quit your job, I'm handing that to you. Now I don't do any of it. So being a leader is really having that vision, holding it. And as entrepreneurs, we got to do both for a little while. When we're just by ourselves, we got to do a little bit of marketing, we got to do sales, and we got to do all of our bookkeeping, like all of that we do ourselves, with the vision that at some point I'm going to hand those off and just move more and more into the CEO mindset. So you have to straddle it for a little bit. You got to be able to see it and step into that and do the tasks that need to be done every day. But there is a definite difference between, and I think for me, I teach my clients how to tap into their intuition more to be able to decision make. Because I think a lot of it is they're used to being told, if this happens, do this. That's like a medical protocol, because they don't want, it's medical malpractice, and there's and people's lives are at stake. Like, there's all these factors involved. But when you come over here and you're like, oh, I'm going to coach somebody, less factors involved. So really think through that. How do you want to deliver that? How do you want to show up? What do you want your client's experience to be like? Nobody talks about that in the medical world. When you go in as a patient, it's like 15 minutes in and out. We won't even look at you because we're on the computer because we have to note everything that you're saying. And there's no patient experience. They come over to entrepreneurship and I'm like, we're going to dive into that a little bit more. I have one client right now. She started her private practice. She just left like 3 months ago in her private practice. And she had a call with one of her new patients. And they were like, am I taking up too much of your time? And she's like, you have 45 more minutes. She's like, really? She said, yeah, that's why I do my own practice. Because you get a full 90-minute appointment with me when we do the introduction. She's like, oh, totally foreign. She was surprised. But that's hard to get used to, that we have so much value to give, because everything has been turned in the healthcare system. It's been turned into a corporation that is more driven by statistics, which I'm not against statistics at all. And like I teach people how to manage all their money in and out, time management, all those things. But you get to do it your own way. You don't have to do it the way somebody's telling you to.
So tell me what this looks like. So in the early stages of a business, when you have chaos and uncertainty, and it can be very overwhelming, I know personally, how do you, as their coach, help your clients find that structure and confidence during that first year? Because that first year is so critical, and the way that you set that structure or the infrastructure as well to your business and what you're going to do will impact the success and every subsequent year. So how do you help them find that structure and confidence?
I actually have systems in place. So I have a vision to action method, which includes the 4 pillars that we go over. And those include your vision, so coming up with what your purpose is, your services, what is the aligned services that you provide, time, purposeful time, so doing things with intention. Most of my clients are full-time workers. They don't have a lot of time. They have family, they have work, they have all the things. It's like, when you're focused on your business, what's going to make the most impact for you to do intentionally? And the last one is the client experience. So making sure that they create that first signature thing that they offer that is so incredible that people want to refer them. So in that first year, it's about building that foundation so that people are going to hear about them, they're going to want to work with them, they're going to continue to work with them, tell their friends about them, like just build that so that they can leave their job. That's like the number one thing that people come to me. They're like, I just want to get out of I'm like, okay, but this is going to take time. It's not something that you just snap your fingers, go on social media, and now you're good. You got to build what that foundation is. And a lot of them are coming out with those mindset limiting beliefs that they just can't get past. So a lot of it is I only do one-on-one coaching. That's my one significant thing that I do. I realized I needed that as a business owner. I did group stuff and I'm like, no, I need someone in my face. I need someone telling me, like, holding my hand and letting me ugly cry and like be me. So I'm like, that's what I'm going to offer my people, one-on-one. So I'm limiting how many people I see. And I also do accountability. So I have 2 live calls that I do a week with all my clients. So it's group calls, but they can show, and I highly recommend that they show up. Just show up. Just be there on that call, just so that you can say, I'm still in it. Because the hardest thing about starting a business and being an entrepreneur is feeling isolated, feeling alone. You get those limiting beliefs, those doubts start to come in, and you're like, why am I even doing this? And blah, blah, blah. You show up every week and you hear other people that are like, I was thinking that this week. We all think that. Let's talk through it. Let's get it out. Let's move on. Now, what are you going to do this week that's going to move you forward?
Love that piece of those. I would call them like community calls, because being an entrepreneur, as you mentioned, is so lonely. And we can defeat ourselves by thinking that we're the only one who's experiencing this challenge. It's why I also love incubator and accelerator spaces where you have young companies together and you're bumping elbows with each other, and you see this other one is trying to fundraise and they're struggling fundraising, or they've been successful and now you're learning from each other. And having that that space. It's not a bitch session, but it is a describing the challenges that you're dealing with. And so someone else can say, oh, I had that happen 2 weeks ago, and now look what's come from it, and have that type of camaraderie that you won't get otherwise. So I just love that piece. Okay. So the 4 things you said were, I remembered the first and the last: vision. And then the last one was like your customer experience piece. I know the reason I remember that. It is my favorite piece of any company. I love the customer experience part. But list what those 4 were again, before we get to your gap method. Yeah.
Yeah. So, vision to action is your vision, that first purpose, what it is that you're doing. Number 2 is services. So what are those purposeful services that you provide? And number 3 is purposeful time. So time in intentional time. So how are you spending your time? And again, if you're full-time and you're doing this part-time and then the full-time goes away, how do you fill in now? How much of that do you want? What do you want that to look like as a full-time entrepreneur? So a lot of that's time piece. And then the client experience is number 4.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So tell me more about your gap planning system.
So it stands for Goal Action Pathway. And it's a spreadsheet because I love my spreadsheets. And I designed it so that you put down, it has revenue goals and it has actionable items. So it's thinking through, okay, if I want to leave my job, I need to make X dollars. In order to accomplish that, here's my services. Okay, how many of those services do I need to sell in order to get to those dollars? Okay, now what do I need to do? This is all the strategy piece. This is all the practical stuff that you have to do. What actions, intentional actions, do I need to do to sell that many? Oh, I'm going to be a guest on 5 podcasts this year. Okay, that's going to get you visibility. I'm going to start my own newsletter. I'm going to do that once a week. Okay, that's going to help you reach out to people, build your email list. So like, what are the things that you as the entrepreneur want to be doing? And then I have a tracking system that goes goal setting, what are you doing? And then you track it. Am I actually on 5 podcasts this year? Or did I only do 2? So you can see where you have gaps in what it is that you're doing. So if you're not reaching your goal, what are you not doing that you said you were going to do? Or what is not working? So maybe a newsletter isn't what your audience wants to hear from you. Maybe you get more people through a podcast or doing a YouTube channel or whatever. So it's a visual way for people to put their goals down, see what they're doing, and analyze them. And then I have every month has its own tab, which creates a monthly look, and that's broken down by day. So literally, I open it, and I look at my calendar, and I put in all of my appointments that I already have, and anything that's open white space, what intentional item am I going to do that I said I was going to do on that day to move me forward to reach my goals. So it's showing them this is the pathway to getting to that revenue.
Well, and I love this because as people are moving from a structured environment that they likely did not create the structure around into entrepreneurship that doesn't have its innate structure, you're walking them through the process of creating that structured environment that you already know they can thrive and excel in because they've done it before. But now they're going to be doing it to something that they are really passionate and really want to do for themselves versus for someone else. Yeah, I know so many people think I don't need a coach. And I will tell people, even the coaches in us, we all have coaches, right? You said at some point you didn't need a coach, right?
It took me a long time to hire a coach. Again, though, I was in my defensive pattern. Before healing that pattern, I can do it myself. That mentality it'll cut you off at the knees. For those of you listening, if you're like, no, I'm independent, I can do it myself, please, 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 I'm just going to say, please just set that down for 10 minutes. Just set it down for 10 minutes. What would you ask for help with if you didn't listen to that voice for 10 minutes? What area of your life would you go, I really do need an integrative nutrition person because my eating is awful, or I really do need help with my budgeting because my money situation is awful. Like, where would you ask for help if you would just set down that defensive pattern of I can do it myself? Because that's what I had to do, and it was tough.
And you know what? People think that super successful people, or we'll just say badass people, that they don't ever ask for help. I right now have a nutritionist because my thyroid is like literally killing me, and I'm working too many hours, and I of course want to do everything, and I know, being a biomedical engineer, being in so many different things, I know what I should be doing. But you know what's really great about my nutritionist that I meet with every 2 weeks is I have that accountability. I know that somebody else is invested in my success and cheering for me and believes in me and supports me. And I believe I can see a path forward because it feels less impossible. You can, by asking for help, go so much faster and enjoy the process so much more. And it actually, I know I feel after starting to work with her, I feel a weight off of my shoulders as well. Because I also am not thinking that. She's reminding me, hey, Angela, you've been doing a lot of exercise. I'm not seeing where you're getting protein, but I'm not seeing the carbs. And you need the carbs for that. I'm like, oh, fair point. Okay, I'm going to add some rice to this, or I'm going to add, some whole grains or something like that. And I think that's the piece of the coach part, is that having that individual who takes a step back. Like one of my coaching clients that I was meeting with her yesterday, and she's done some amazing work at her job. And she, for example, just got a pretty significant award for something. And so I said to her, okay, so you're going to add that to your LinkedIn, right? And she was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And I was like, yes, you're going to add that to your LinkedIn. You're also going to add a bullet point on your LinkedIn under your thing about what you accomplished. And then she got the award because she had masterfully done this whole hackathon that was such a huge success. And I said, and you know what? Why don't you've done this type of hackathon twice now. It's been a huge success. Why don't you write a blog post on it? She wants to be a leader, an expert voice in the field. Like, why don't you go ahead and write a blog post on it? And she said to me, she says, you know what? This is why you're my coach. And it's easy for me on the outside to hear her tell me the story of what's going on. And so then what we did, much like you use Excel, we use Asana. And so we were both in Asana right then. We're like, okay, we're going to create this task so that, and then next time we meet in 2 weeks, we'll collaborate to see where we've gone. So that level of accountability, the level for a coach to see from the outside, to give you feedback and give you ideas that move you in the direction you want to go. And also the ability, I think we are often all so hard on ourselves that we don't celebrate the wins as much as we should. And to have someone who's pushing you to celebrate the wins, that's the kind of coach I want.
Yeah, and I want to just stay with the wins for a minute, because when we're in it, we're so driven to goal setting. We're like, I want to achieve. So you achieve the goal and you just swipe it behind you. You're like, okay, go on to the next one. Where a coach can be like, can you pause at that goal that you just finished for just a second and take that in, that you accomplished that goal? Because I'm that way. I'm like, okay, next goal, let's go. Because we just are so focused on what we want to achieve that we don't stop and pause for a minute and go, oh, I'm going to celebrate here for a minute and really feel that and feel how exciting that is. So yeah, I agree. The other thing, I always use this mostly for my audience because it's a medical thing, but I know people understand. Lives are not saved by one person. When you have an emergency, when you go in, and you see this on medical shows, that ER, when there's one patient, there's at least 5 to 7 people around them, all experts in their field, doing what they know how to do for one person. So you don't save lives alone, is really what I like to say. We don't save lives alone. Yes, we have to do solo for a while, but not forever. And if you're going to do solo, I think a coach is the first one you hire, because they're going to help you identify what the next people are that are going to come and be on your team, because they're going to be able to see the stuff you don't see and be like, oh, you know what? You're really strong over here. You can keep doing that. But this over here, let's find somebody to pick that up for you, because I know that's going to help you move forward faster. If you hire somebody to do this one thing, you can focus over here where you're really good. And we don't see it.
and so I think that's the key, that for the young entrepreneurs that are in here, and I say young, meaning you're new to entrepreneurship, not necessarily young in age, because you can be an entrepreneur at any age. There are plenty of amazing, successful people who didn't even start until they were in their 50s or 60s. But I think that those are the key things, that you tie yourself to someone who's done it before, that help you walk that journey. And it's really important. Okay, so you often speak about authenticity and energy alignment. We've talked about energy alignment. We haven't talked about authenticity yet. But how can leaders make space for both the profit and the purpose, and here's the key, without burning out?
I would say it comes down to all the things we've just been talking about, is taking care of yourself first. I have a mastermind call that just started between me and some other solo business coaches, consultants and life coaches. We're kind of a little mix of everything. And I was really surprised, because I asked the question, I'm like, what do you like about Friday the most? It's like, let's get to know each other. They've all been on my podcast. And all of us have freedom to choose what we're doing. So we have aligned our life to be the way we want our life to be before our business, instead of the other way around. So when you can show up authentically and say, I'm going to hold Fridays to be a flexible day, which is what most of them said, is that Fridays, I don't see any patients or clients or anybody on those days. I can just do whatever I want with it. And most of them, they have their spouses off or whatever. And they're just like, I just block the time and take the day off, or I just do whatever I feel like, or I go get a massage or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what other job could you have that you could actually do that if you're working for somebody else? Very limited. I'm sure they're out there, mostly probably small business owners that are with flex time and stuff like that. But so I think going internally first, saying, what do I desire my life to be? What type of a person am I? You can make money at anything. I mean, I am a firm believer that you can make a business out of anything. But if your only driver is money and success in that way, and it's not, I want to sleep 8 hours a night, and I want to eat healthy, and I want to spend time with my family, and I want to be in this relaxed environment, I'm not saying you're not going to work hard. You got to work hard as an entrepreneur. That is a given. But if you don't want to burn out, you have to check in with yourself. If, for example, I woke up randomly in the middle of the night last night and I'm like, I'm really not able to sleep. So in my mind, I was like, I could get up and work. Yeah, because that's the entrepreneur brain. I'm like, woo. And then I was like, no, you're not going to do that, because that's not taking care of you. You're going to do some deep breathing, turn on your meditation, and drift yourself back to sleep, because you know you have a podcast tomorrow, and you're not going to stretch yourself really thin. Because I could have gotten up at midnight, came in here and like started doing stuff. I have stuff in my head that's always going off, but I had to check in with myself and go, what's really important? Sleep is more important right now. So really just checking in with yourself, but you have to know yourself. I think that's the authenticity piece, is knowing who you are, knowing what you are capable of. And yes, we can work hard. There are times when I'll work a 12-hour day on purpose, not because I have to, and then I'm burning out. So it's, okay, I'm going to work this 12-hour day, but maybe I'm going to take an extra day off this week and recover from doing that extra hard work.
Well, and you can't show up as yourself if you haven't done the inner work to figure out who you are. So all the listeners, go rewind back when we were talking about that, because you will not ever be able to show up authentically. Let me see if I can say the word authentically if you haven't done that work. It is impossible. One of my favorite things about to try and go back to sleep in the middle of the night is I love the Headspace app, the sleepscapes they have in it, where you can like replay it, or they have little ones that you can play if you wake up from a nightmare or something like that. And they are so soothing. So this podcast is not sponsored by Headspace. Although if you want to sponsor it, you could, but it's not. But I highly recommend finding, and what I highlight in that is finding a tip or a tool that helps you recenter yourself in a meditative way that will allow you to be calm in what you are or where you are at right now and be able to have that relaxation that you really need in order to be your best self. And I think also the authentic piece of it is I am not a morning person. Everyone on my team knows I am not a morning person. So I may send an email at 10 o'clock at night and they just laugh at it. They know I'm not sending an email at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so I think it's also that too, when you realize who you are, what you want to be, is the courage to find a job or an environment that aligns with that so that you can be set up for success. Okay. One question is conflict resolution. I love conflict, and the audience knows that. So tell me, Suzy, how do you handle conflict resolution, especially when, as we know, emotions and trauma responses are often at play in those client relationships or collaborations? Tell me how do you do it personally, and then how do you recommend in coaching?
So personally first, this is good because this is where it totally aligns with my healing process. So as I went internal and learned more about myself and my own responses, again, like you and I agreed, we didn't feel stuff in our body. Well, because we had numbed out. Like that was a safety mechanism. Well, when you start to heal through things and you resolve these things, you start to feel. Well, when I started to feel and notice, okay, my heart's racing a little bit more, or I have a lump in my throat, or I'm noticing myself shrinking back, like I'm physically like trying to remove myself, that is like, oh, okay, this is a conflict that I'm not comfortable with. Now, step 2, I feel it. What do I need to do in this moment? What am I capable of doing in this moment? Is it, I'm reading an email and nobody's in front of me, so nobody sees this happening. They don't even know it's happening. I have time. So then I can check in with myself. What in this email is causing this feeling, this emotion, this stuff to come up? And I can sit with that. And like we talked about earlier in the podcast, this could have nothing to do with the email. They may have said a statement in there that is from 10 years ago or in the war zone or whatever's happening in my life at that moment that triggered that. So I can sit with that, reread the email, take a minute, take a pause. If it's so emotionally driven, then I can ask for help. I can actually reach out to somebody that I trust, probably my trauma coach, and say, hey, I can't resolve this. Like there's something that this has just thrown me a loop that I just can't get out of, and work through it that way. That's extreme. Now, if it's in person, and this has happened, I have skills that I've learned for myself, and everybody's individual. Mine was I was afraid to speak up. So in a conflict, if someone said something to me that I didn't agree with or that was uncomfortable, I would just stay quiet and I would just absorb it and be like, whatever. Don't want to rock the boat. Don't want to embarrass myself. Don't want to whatever. And I wouldn't say anything. So as I was healing, I remember a person had said something to me that normally I would have just let go by. And she said it and I looked at her and I just automatically responded, but I responded from my healed self. So I just straight up looked at her and I said, it's on my podcast. Have you listened? And not in like a, because she was questioning if I had shared stuff. And I'm like, do you even listen to my podcast? Like, yeah, it's all over my podcast. Like if you listened, you wouldn't even be asking me that question. But it was like, you're questioning me on something that I'm totally comfortable doing, that I've been doing, and you're questioning whether I'm doing it. And I'm like, well, if you paid attention, you'd know I do. It's like, but not in a mean or trying to cause an argument. And she just was like, oh, I didn't realize. And that was it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually speak up and not cause, a huge argument or cause this huge conflict. And it just made me realize that the more we know ourselves and we know what it is that we struggle with, we can respond in ways. Again, it's responding in a way instead of reacting. So when you're in a conflict, nervous system's on fire and you just want to lash out, knowing what your way of doing that is. For me, I would shrink back, not say anything. The healed me is like, okay, respond. Don't do it in a mean way or in a way that's going to cause more aggressive behavior, but just stand up for yourself. Don't sugarcoat it, but don't, cause problems either.
Now, does that tie into your soul-led leadership methodology?
Yes, it does. Because when we know who we are, we then are objective about situations instead of being like tied up in them. So instead of reacting to a situation, this is a great example. I was in the veterinary office for my dog. So we're at the vet. I'm in one of the rooms and the technician comes in and she was so rude. Oh my gosh, rude, and like didn't make eye contact, really short with me, like having all these like just uncomfortable. I was like, whoa, I don't even know if I want her to touch my dog. Like, this is crazy. She left the room and I went, Suzy, what's going on here? Like, why are you feeling this way? What's the deal? And I did a little internal and I was like, I have a trigger in veterinary offices because of the work that I did. So I sat with it for a minute, and when she came back into the room, I am not even kidding, Angela, she was the nicest person. I'm like, who are you? She was friendly. She was playing with my dog. She was asking me questions. She was like, and the doctor came in, she was nice to him. And I was like, did I just like make magic happen? Like, what just happened? It was my perception and how I had created the environment that she walked into. So she was on edge. She was like, what's going on in this room? It's energy. It's like what we put out. We have an energy field that can go up to 6 feet out all the way around it. And people feel it. We don't realize sometimes. And I was having my own moment because I didn't know subconsciously. I had all the stuff happening. And I think she sensed it. And that's why she was closed off, because her defense is, it's not safe in this room. Oh my God. But me just realizing it, bringing it down, totally fine. So we don't realize it's us. It's like we can really de-escalate a lot ourselves if we can recognize it.
Love this example. And one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about that, and I was envisioning myself in the room and envisioning that energy shift, is also when you talk to people and you tell them, like the individuals that I coach or I work with, I say, look, energy matters. You need to surround yourself with people who are feeding positive energy into it. Get away from the people that are constantly negative about everything. Instead, surround yourself with those people. And it makes such a huge difference. And so also for ourselves, don't be the person who's putting out that negative energy, because it does have that huge cascade effect. And if you've ever met someone who the minute they walk into the room light, it becomes more bright, right? They have so much energy and you just want to be around that person. So anyone who's a naysayer about the energy piece, that is another piece of proof that it is in fact a big deal, and we can own that ourselves. And I absolutely love that piece of it. Okay, are you ready for our rapid fire questions?
Yes, give them to me.
All righty, let's do it. Okay, what is a book, podcast, or person that deeply influenced your leadership style?
Okay, so I had to think about this one because there's so many. And what really kept coming to me is Wayne Dyer, The Power of Intention, his book. For anybody who has it, if you're questioning the energy piece, I would recommend that book, because it's really about thoughts, and that our thoughts create that intention, which again, thoughts are energy, which make reality. And so the book is amazing. It did change how I saw everything. When I read it, I think I read it in like 3 days.
Amazing. Okay, what's one thing you wish more leaders understood about healing?
You can't see it. It's like the wind. You know it's there because you see the effect. So you don't see the wind blowing until it blows a tree leaf or it blows a clothesline. Like if it's just blowing and there's nothing around, is it blowing until you feel your hair move? It's the same type of thing. I just wish more people would embrace that healing is the effect for people It changes who they are. Transformation, you can see it, but it's a before and after.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, describe your leadership style in 3 words.
This one I had to think about because it's only 3 words. I would say visionary is number 1, and intuition is number 2, and empowerment is number 3.
Ooh, powerful, powerful, powerful. Okay, when you, Suzy, are feeling stuck or overwhelmed, what's your go-to grounding practice?
If I'm being healthy, mostly when I'm not healthy, I do things like avoid things. But if I'm really wanting to ground and bring myself back in, I like to do several deep breathing, barefoot. If I'm in a building, barefoot on the floor, if I'm outside in the grass or something like that, and just being present for at least 20 to 30 seconds. Allow myself to feel myself breathe.
Big fan of the barefoot. Actually, I don't know if you can see. You can't see it. I'm barefoot. I'm trying to find the camera. I'm barefoot. Okay, the rest of the world, you saw my feet. If you were in studio, I would have shoes on because we do full video. But I'm totally barefoot right now.
I wouldn't care if you were barefoot. I wouldn't care if you were barefoot.
Well, I was thinking about it when we were talking about the body and the somatic things, and I was feeling my feet on the carpet and the rug as we were talking about it, and just reminding myself this is so grounding feeling. So I'm a big fan of barefoot world. Okay, so what is one lesson the military taught you that still shows up in your business today?
Routine and consistency. So I'm not a big fan of routine because I like to creatively do things and be intuitive about things, but you do have to have certain things in a routine and consistent with business to be successful. I totally support that. So meshing those two together can be a challenge. And I remind myself when I start to get too creative and too out into the woo-woo, I'm just going to be meditating and thinking about things, that I need to ground myself and then take some action. So definitely the routine and consistency I learned in the military.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, now what is your favorite motivational quote?
I'm going to read it. So, when you realize there's nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so tell the listeners how they can, first off, tell them how they can find your podcast. We will include links to everything in the show notes as usual, but tell them how they can find your podcast, how they can connect with you, potentially be a future client, refer clients, learn from your experiences, all of that stuff.
It's really simple. I put everything on my website. It's startingabusinesssimplified.com. You can go to the podcast there. You can click on it for all my social media, which I don't go to everywhere. LinkedIn, mostly LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel. You can get my podcast on the YouTube channel there as well.
Amazing. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for going through this journey with me. And I'm thinking I need to go back to Alaska, but you're reminding me now I don't want to go in the winter unless maybe I go somewhere more south.
You know what I tell people? I will say this, and any of your listeners, if you're curious, do the cruise. I say that because when I went for my retreat this time, I was like, man, I didn't get to see as much as I wanted to because it's so big. But if you do the cruise, you get all of Southeast Alaska, which is breathtakingly amazing. You have water and mountains all the way up through the Inside Passage. So you get like a lot of really good experience in a short period of time.
Well done. Well done. Well, thank you so much for helping us drive our badass selves into leadership in every way we possibly can. I'm grateful.
Thanks, Angela, for having me.
Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast. To hear more interviews with industry experts and learn how to grow your career and leadership potential, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. This podcast is a production of the AGN Group. To learn more about the AGN Group, visit our website at theagnGroup.com. There, you can discover more about our services, which include hosting workshops, management consulting, brand strategy, keynote speaking, and more. Follow us on all social media channels shown on the screen and displayed in the show notes. And until next week, be brave and be badass.